in Ukraine. Now she's and coordinating the project there. She has the diploma of interpreter, and it never leaves her. She has to interpret again and again. No, this is not her project description. So yeah,
thank you very much. It actually is a part of my job description as well, and I enjoy that I still have to translate and interpret stuff. It gives me a lot of pleasure. Today, I would like to invite two guest speakers to me. This is Katja and Nataliya, and I would like to invite you to join me here. And podium discussion, we will talk more about the initiatives that are taking place abroad. So when we are talking about cultural diplomacy as such, the word of diplomacy means that we want to bring something from our country or from our culture to someone else and to promote it there. So we have these two. Katja is from Belarus and Nataliya is from Ukraine. So first of all, their initiatives are actually promoting their countries and spreading the word about their countries in abroad. So first we have Katja Rumiantseva. So she's the German Belarusian activist, and she's also the member of RAZAM and awareness for Belarus and reframing dialogue about post-Soviet spaces from intersectional feminist perspectives. She's one of the main actors from the young generation in Germany to advocate for these issues via Instagram. She also initiated the RAZAM and the Liber campaign, which is hashtag Belarus sichtbar machen, or in English it would be Make Belarus Visible. It took place in 2021, and she is also regularly holding presentations and workshops for students and young generation, young adults about the different dynamics that are happening in and around Belarus. So yes, this is Katja. And also we have Nataliya here, who is a political scientist and activist as well. And she's the co-founder of IWEK, which in English would mean for Initiative for Knowledge Exchange, Environment and Culture. And also she is a member and the head of Allianz of Ukrainian organizations. She has been living in Germany for already 18 years now, and she was always very active in the sphere of cultural diplomacy. She also used to work in the German parliament, think tanks, and different NGOs. Right now, she does work in another NGO as well, and this is in the field of humanitarian aid for Ukraine. And her main topics of interest and of work are advocacy, networking between Ukrainian organizations in Ukraine, the German ones, and also she works on the blind spots in perception of Ukraine here in Germany and in general abroad. So a warm welcome to you. And we will start with two presentations, first from Katja and then from Nataliya, about their work and about their organization, what they do in the field of cultural diplomacy. And then later on, we will go deeper in the topic of dealing with disinformation, because as our conference is not about only how to promote our countries or our, within our countries, but it's also how do we work when we have a lot of disinformation campaigns or misinformation campaigns attacking what we're doing. So this will be two main focuses for us. And now the word is with Katja.
Okay, so hi, hello, thank you so much, not only for the invitation, but also for the presentations and the past day of exchange. It's very interesting for me, especially as a young person, to hear so many insightful new perspectives about countries. And so let's start maybe with the organization that I'm with today. It's the Organisationen RAZAM, Belarusian Society RAZAM, and we are quite the new, quite young organization. I thought maybe some of you know us already, some of you probably don't. So who are we? We've already talked about the Belarus uprising in 2020, and so inspired by this democracy movement in Belarus, Belarusians founded this Belarussische Gemeinschaft RAZAM here in Germany on actually the date of the rigged elections on August 9th in 2020. So the Belarusian movement for democracy didn't only happen in Belarus itself, but actually it mobilized diasporas all around the globe. So we have Belarusians active in Brazil, in Austria, in Switzerland, in Australia, everywhere where you can imagine. And we are most definitely not the only Belarusian organizations. There are also others here in Germany, for example, CuDi and Belarus. But also about the people's ambassadors of Belarus, and what makes us unique is that we are the first and meanwhile largest nationwide interest group of Belarusians in Germany. Currently, we have over 270 members, and we're represented in each federal state of Germany. And so, as you might imagine, our different activist and political and cultural work is always very based on the locations that we're in, and so every single one of those groups, states, but after the most prominent groups that are currently active, people find each other and organize different local projects and, for example, working with local governments. We have these 9 regional groups and 8 staff members. We have 2 people who are currently also representing RAZAM as the head of our organization, one of them being Rumiantseva, and those are people that work with a diaspora, of course, with an exchange with different people, different organizations, and also different Belarusian organizations, for example, Poland, Lithuania, and of course, for the start of the full-scale Russian aggression and invasion in February, there were also loads of cooperations in Ukraine, because there was also a huge exile hub for Belarusians who fled from repression in 2020. So, what do we actually want, apart from, of course, productive change? We want to represent the interests of Champagne bringt Glück, this is like a German saying. It brings luck. We want to represent the interests of the Belarusian diaspora in Germany, because there has never been such an organization before. We want to, especially now, promote Belarusian language and culture, also to differentiate it from other countries and special other neighbors, to be seen as a sovereign state. We want to make Belarus visible in the German and also in the European public, because Belarusian invisibility goes far beyond just saying now we have attention in Ukraine, because of course we have attention when there's a genocide happening. But Belarusian invisibility is like a historical problem, and it also plays very much into the narrative, not only of Lukashenko, but also from beforehand, that Belarus is like part of Russia or whatever. So this is like one of our main points that we're always advocating for, is our sovereignty and our hopefully one day democratic future, which will definitely come. So this is also the next part. We want to be a strong lobby for democratic Belarus, which also means representing democratic values, for example, freedom of speech, or certain voting processes that we're also establishing in our own organizational structures. And we want to provide assistance for victims of repression, which is one of our main focuses in what we do. There are 5 different parts of our work, one of them being lobbying and networking also, and also what plays into that is talking to German politicians, for example, and to promote what's currently happening in Belarus and this perspective. Then very much based on local initiatives on different solidarity events and actions. We have film screenings, for example, right now with loads of screenings in cooperation with Anastasiia, the documentary CuDi, which was also here visible at the Berlinale 1 year ago, I believe. We have loads of demonstrations. We had in 2020, of course, loads of them right now. We try to support the Ukrainian diaspora here, but also different cultural events. For example, in Berlin, we have a place at Alexanderplatz, which is called Haus der Statistik, where our current office is, and there we have various different events, like some of them being where we invite musicians for jam sessions, for donation events. Also, Jazz Aid Ukraine was one of the projects that was great because millions about. But of course, like when we talk about like German-wide work, it's 8 initiatives about Belarus and also Ukraine. It's information and public relations, again, advocating for current ever-changing dynamics and situations. And we want to offer places for the diaspora, for our active members to actually meet, to get to know each other. Here are 6 of our 6 donation-based initiatives, which are very strongly going with how much money we receive, of course. It's our main focus, like help for political prisoners in Belarus. On one hand, you can of course argue like, yes, it's emotionally hard when a person from your family or like your relative is in prison. This is the emotional side. The financial side is it's incredibly expensive because of like the current situation of prison is there you get the bare minimum and even less and even worse treatment, and so you have to come up for costs for advocates, you have to come up for costs for like basic human hygiene for people who menstruate, for example. And all of that, this is like adding up and adding up and adding up, plus lots of families are therefore not only losing a loved person to prison, but also a person with a steady income. And so this is for us like a very important thing to help the families of political prisoners. And of course also to help refugees from Belarus in Germany, not only on a humanitarian, but also on a advocacy and also on a jurisdictional level. So if you have any friends, any people who don't know where to turn to, we have an address also on our website, contact RAZAM. We help with law and combating German bureaucracy, and also helping people to get the status of being politically repressed, so that you have special kind of standing here in Germany. We were also helping with initial accommodation for Belarusian refugees in Poland, which is like one of the main countries where people fled to. Humanitarian aid for Ukraine, which started in February, where we had everywhere locally gathering and supporting points. Emergency help for politically repressed, so people who don't really know where to turn to again, write us, so that we will keep them safe and also their information safe, and guide them a little bit to what to do now, what to do next. And currently, my project is also collecting money for mine detectors, because Ukraine is currently one of the most mine countries in the world, and we understand that this is of incredible importance, this military aid, and this is one of my projects. Funding projects are Perspective. It's like a residence program for repressed cultural actors from Belarus. Again, emergency help for refugees from both Belarus and Ukraine, and also to build a European network for Belarus. On the right side, you can see our partner, the Allianz of Ukrainian Organizations. We're very happy that we can work on different issues together. All of our events, and this is probably the greatest thing we have since we updated our website, is our calendar. You can find it on RAZAM.de. Every single event related to Belarus you can find online, and you can also submit when you do something to support for there's actually like this, as you might see, the CuDi Conference is also already part of that. Probably for us most exciting upcoming project will be happening right now in September. It's the first Belarusian Cultural Festival in Munich, so if you have time to be in Germany, feel free to go there. We have certain discounts also for, of course, members of our organization, but also people from Ukraine, for refugees from all countries, and cultural educators. So definitely check that out. And yes, thank you so much for your attention. That's it on my side.
Thank you very much, Katja. We will come to the questions later and getting deeper into the topic. And for now, I will give the word to Nataliya.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this conference. It's really
exciting. I joined just half an hour ago, and I'm deeply impressed. What are you doing? New ideas. This great opportunity to develop new ideas and to be a part of it. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce very shortly Allianz Ukrainian organizations, and I, to be honest, it's actually not a presentation. It's just more or less a bottom line of things that we are doing, because at the moment it's so, since also February, that we are reacting on topics, reacting on things, and have no time to create even notation about our organization. And it sounds very strange, but it's so, because everybody is doing like so many things that just difficult to do it very structural, like to do a normal page, to do the content based, a normal presentation. But even despite of that, I would like just to talk to you and just so elections are really good, are not registered yet, but on the board. We are 10 organizations at the moment. There are Cinema, Kultura, Ukrainian Orthodox Church, Ukrainian Help Berlin. It's an organization. Maybe I will talk to you about. Oh, it's the oldest one. It's a Kino Club of Ukrainian community. Was based by Sasha Bina, and it works since 2009 till now. And as I showed Ukrainian films to German society, that's one of our biggest aim, to build a bridge and to show Ukrainian culture to different cultures that are living in Germany. But of course, the Germans are Kultura works, as the name said, on the cultural field, and founded in 2011. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church was actually, it's very interesting, because after the Revolution of Dignity, a lot of people gathered together and they founded a Ukrainian church, and these both organizations, Ukrainian and Ukrainian Orthodox Church, works very close to each other, because they're providing humanitarian aid to Ukraine, and they are the most helps that goes to Ukraine of these both organizations. I'm representing IWEK, Initiative for Knowledge Exchange, Empowerment and Culture. We were founded 2017, but actually we worked all these years. I have been in Germany since 18 years, but I have the feeling that since all this time I am working in the field of cultural diplomacy somehow, on the field of advocacy and talking about Ukraine, bringing people together, do projects together. So together with my partners, but we are also providing humanitarian aid because of the full-scale invasion, full-scale war that we have in Ukraine at the moment. And so it's, I think, more or less each of our organizations are providing humanitarian aid also. We have PLAST, Children and Youth Organization. PLAST would be famous for Ukrainian people from Ukraine. It's very old. The headquarters is in Munich, but we have also this is part of our organization, also in Berlin. Ukrainian school, and now it's a big issue, of course, in Berlin, because there are a lot of children and young people. It is also gathering people together. So our organizations are working together with each other, and probably PLAST and Ukrainian very deep cooperation. Ukrainian radio was founded also 2018, also very cool, to be honest, because we have this opportunity also to Ukrainians, but also the Germans that are working with Ukraine, or somehow connecting perspectives to our countries where we Ukrainian virtual house is somehow Ukrainian house that we are fighting, to be honest, since I have been living in Germany. We are looking for a place like to be together, and unfortunately, at this point now we actually now we have a place where we can meet together, where all our 10 organizations and also people there that are interested in Ukraine and work with Ukraine can get together like this, like room that we have just to have the space and be together and create some Ukraine civil society center. It's a big aim that we are following, but at the moment it's not. It's a big topic for us. Until then, we have this Ukrainian virtual house where you can find more information about Ukraine, but also for people that are coming now. You can find like basic information where you can register, how to find flags, how to find people, to do activities together, and so on. And we have a very young organization, but very active organization each year. It's very actually also famous. There are a lot of people there doing demonstrations but I will show it to you this picture. So there I said it's more or less a photo line and not presentation, but yeah. So our aim is to change perception of Ukraine in Germany and to change it so that Ukraine could be or is then a subject in politics and society and in cultural field in media. Because at the moment, very often, also since the war starts in 2014, there were very often the situations that it was spoken about Ukraine and about Ukraine without Ukrainians. And we have a great community of scientists, of people that really can contribute to this discussion. It changed a little bit this February, but we are not sure if it's sustainable development, and we are fighting really like it's our big aim to change this perception in society. And also coordinate the efforts of Ukrainian civil society and establish a dialogue between German and Ukraine to develop a strengthened democracy, democratic, cultural, and social foundations in both societies. So we are not just it should be a dialogue. We are working on a dialogue between different parts of societies that we are living in, like Germans and also different cultures. But it's very important to talk about Ukraine, to speak about different problems. And since 2016, we have also this IWEK, like an internet Facebook site. Ukraine in Deutschland, Ukraine in Germany, and we are talking about Ukraine in Germany, what we are doing here, and what are our connecting points. It's also a big part of advocacy, and all of our organizations are working in this field, like to connect our societies. So we are working in the field. It's like a huge field, to be honest, but we are also in organizations at the moment. And it's activism, a lot of demonstrations, political communication. So we are trying to react to different political developments. Like maybe you know this Schwarzer letter to the German government when they asked to stop to Ukraine, and we also reacted to this letter, and it was published also. It's step by step in the direction, but we are also politicians and also and of different levels in the federal system, according to German federal system. So humanitarian aid is of course a big issue, but for people that came from Ukraine now, activities for this and culture events in Ukrainian school, cultural events, it's more or less all of our organizations are doing also cultural events, and it's also a big question of cultural diplomacy and educational policy area. And that was Katja, what are you doing with seminars, and maybe we can also more exchange in this direction, because we are also developed some seminars that we are going to schools and universities, and we talk to different people to different topics. So just a couple of impressions. It was the last demonstration was organized by Katja and also it's the Rumiantseva, also in Berlin, and we are also working together when they are the Allianz organizations. Yeah, but yeah, it was one of the biggest and very impressive actions. It's in front of Bundestag RAZAM building. I mean, they were like there were more or less 6,000 people from different organizations. There were a lot of German organizations like Pryhornytska and Halyko. Like it was one of the big things that we were happy about. It was not just from Ukraine, but from different organizations. Yeah, so there are two most famous ones. Demonstrations. And yeah, and according to cultural diplomacy, it's also like art is a big issue for us. And that was an exhibition organized by Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainian Berlin. It was in also in Bundestag. So it was great outreach. And afterwards, in the parliament opened, yeah, it's a few pictures, and it was about the war, Russian war in Ukraine, and so a couple of pictures. There may be a little short, because yeah, during that you have just this impression of how it's going on. It's it feels like daily and day by day, night by night, working on all these issues and trying to coordinate. People, like all of these organizations are working together. We are gathering first aid kits for our army, and also gathering funds. Very great and very important project is also a book project from IWEK and Kultura is also a democracy. And called the he had an idea after full-scale invasion. He just immediately after that started to work with Kuzma. It was the first corporation, the biggest bookshop in Germany, and he's this is also a big effort that okay. Thank you very much. So that Ukrainian books were in German stores and also in Ukrainian libraries and in a lot of libraries and home German. We are both this. Class activities and school activities like there are a lot of kids and there are more or less every weekend retreats. It was one of the biggest. There were two big events where the first time were 10,000 people, and on the second time 6,000 people from Ukraine, but also from different countries. It was also a big issue. I want to do it for people that are coming from Ukraine, not just Ukrainians, but also from different countries, to include them in all of this health process. It is, I forget to write this, Maya it's a lighthouse Ukraine, and it also goes to different cities in Germany. So it was actually, our partners, we have to skip just shortly to our partners. It's a little bit, there are our partners, there are a lot. So we are working together with a lot of different organizations, and it's this tempo, it's very quick that everything that it happened because a lot of organizations, of course, contacted us, and we are trying to deal with all these topics. But there are also so many events, so big field of work. Yes, so we are developing, and I hope that next time I can show you more very practical things that we are developed already. Like we are also working. It's a big issue at the moment to connect all of organizations in Germany that are connected to diaspora organizations with all organizations that are working in field of humanitarian aid or also cultural exchange or political exchange, but like my friends in German organizations. Thank you very much, and
these are two great initiatives out of like many others that are already in place in the city or in the country, but also there's always space for more because some countries or aspects of cultures are still underrepresented from each of the 6 countries that we have today from the Eastern Partnership. And yeah, so you both were mentioning about bringing attention to your country and making your own narrative about it and making it visible and seen as a separate and sovereign state, which usually is starting to happen only when some place, unfortunately, and before that it is very hard to actually drag attention of foreigners to a country which they think like, oh, well, what is that? Why should I know about it? Like, I know in the Friends episodes when this scientist guy, they were like 25 times mentioning that like, oh yeah, I'm moving to Minsk, it's in Russia. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I mean, like, this is the whole team of people working on the series, and like no one ever apparently was even thinking that it's not at all in Russia or like, so, and I mean, crew is huge, and even though it was 20 years ago, it was still like already the thing. And a lot of people, as we have heard also on the previous days, that like for Georgia, for example, people are like, oh yeah, USA, right, and so on and so forth. So it means we need to keep promoting this, and this is so great that you're doing everything that you have been mentioning so far. So we will get closer to the topic of disinformation. So basically, when we're talking about making your own country visible and separating from being seen as a part of something else, especially when we talk about all the imperialistic states like Russia and like their colonial culture that they're spreading very actively abroad. There also might be disinformation or misinformation attacks or narratives built around to attack what you're doing and prevent you from spreading it. So my question would be if you have encountered any, and so how have you dealt with that?
So I think there is a bit different between disinformation and fake news and propaganda. So we are in the times that we have all information involved, and when we are talking about fake news, it's just like spread it in the media, for example, and then we have to listen. And to be honest, one very big thing that we really have was 2015. It was so-called Lisa. It was about a young girl, Russian roots, that was raped by 2 refugees from Syria. And so Lavrov was saying that we will also there were a huge demonstration from Katja, but it was really a big fake news campaign. So this and it took a huge mashup. So since we have things like that now at the moment, because everybody is looking into Syria and trying to analyze, but there are a lot of things that are somehow subtitles here. So like yeah, not direct, and you are just start to think, is it true or is it not true? And it's exactly what propaganda is. Like you start to think, is it really narratives that are really, unfortunately, also now in Germany. And I cannot say that it's in like all societies, so it's not. But a lot of people, or I get suspicions very often, why Ukraine are fighting? Why do you don't want peace in your world? And it's something that hurts very, very much. Because I'm originally from Ukraine, and I'm very connected to Ukraine. So just to explain that it's not just about Ukraine, and Ukraine is not a problem. Ukraine was attacked 2014 by Russia, and this is actually not present in the society. And that's why it's so important to work on this cultural diplomatic sphere, because just to develop in formats, talk to people. And one also very, very big issue for us is also to create the space to have this dialogue, like to invite people and say, everybody, you can come and ask everything what you want about Ukraine, or you can ask everything about our relationship, also between different countries, like peaceful partnerships, for example, or also our relationship to Russia. In the last event, I was asked, are there some differences between Russians and Ukrainians? Then you just can imagine this understanding what is going on. And I mean, of course, this question is also legitimate. People should ask some of these questions, because then maybe my colleagues or everybody of us has this chance to explain or just to answer this question. So, disinformation and I think I would say it's more this blind spots in perception. It's really this super topic blind spots in the perception and of connection to history and historical developments. A lot of people really don't know Germany, and also different European countries, and also different European Union countries.
Thank you. I will have another question to what you have said, but first we'll
whenever I start with my work and when I start directly approaching people, I'm always at first assuming the best. People mostly have the best intentions, and most people just really don't know things. And those are like structural problems that we need to talk about. And like for us, it's like a lot also like Belarusian visibility. And what we cannot change is like a factual knowledge for every single country in this world and every single political situation. However, what we can change and what we're working on is the approach that we are taking. For example, and that is nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, which is one very important slogan, because yes, Ukraine is very much in the attention center, but not from the right people. So like German philosophers sitting in talk shows and talking things about a country they didn't know existed like 2 years ago. And so from a German perspective, yes, a lot of like dialogue is also changing, especially when we talk about what happened in 2014, where there were basically like no solidarity actions from the broad like German public, which has changed, of course, also because the scale of violence took a whole new level in like the past half year. But what we're talking about is like changing this approach and also changing the narratives. And I think this is the pro and con, maybe at the same time, of Belarusian invisibility. We are not targeted as much. There are loads of, for example, hate crimes, hate speech against Ukrainians and people who are currently standing up for Ukraine. This doesn't really happen with Belarus. Even people who are very much into that whole Russian propaganda narratives, they don't really know anything about Belarus. The worst thing that they can say is that it's part of Russia. But like there are no such like negatively based stereotypes. And so what we try like to do is, of course, to advocate for what's been happening in Belarus, not only since 2020, but like oppositionalists and politicians have been killed already like in the early 2000s. And so we set our own narratives, and we actually have been attacked also by disinformation propaganda TV, like RAZAM has been on that channel for very few seconds, where they were like trying to get in contact with us via email, and then kind of started screenshotting very weird things from our website, and that was very funny because in the end they were just like making free advertisement for us, and people protect that themselves. And that was something that we discussed with our members, but when we thought, okay, when we will actually give those people a space and a platform, we will promote even further that there is such channel. And I think, like when we talk about Belarus, we mostly talk about it from like contrasting like perspectives. For example, when we talk about revolutions, we will talk about differences in from like Ukrainian revolutions and like the Belarusian uprising. When we talk about propaganda, we will mostly compare to Russia. And so, like, Belarusian propaganda is so blatantly obvious that it's very hard to find people who A, watch it, and B, believe it. Because the people who are holding themselves in the system right now, this is a very, very crucial question, because from Belarusian territory, over 600 rockets have, like, rocket sources launched onto Ukraine from our territory because of Russian occupation, also because of Lukashenko. Towards him, people in Ukraine are dying. And this is a system where we also try to work into that. They don't necessarily believe in the propaganda, but they hold themselves there because of their own security and their own position, because they are very much afraid of what might happen in an outflow. And so one of the things that we do is, maybe we can skip to the next slide. Yes, was actually a big did was Belarus, so like addressed to the Belarusians. Do not engage in crimes against Ukrainian people, and so this has also been like one of like our most viral posts also on Instagram that we publish in Ukraine and in Belarusian, which means when we publish something in Belarusian, mostly Ukrainians, Belarusians, and maybe Polish people will understand it. So like out of the 14,000 something people liked it, even more people saw it, and this is something that's a very critical point of how we try to further influence into Belarusian society and educate for that. And yes, what we're dealing with more is actually misinformation, and so they're just like things where we're like always correcting like on the Belarusian and on the German side mistakes that happen because we live in a world of social media. Everything gets fast, and we try to look at information that has actually been checked. When journalists reach out to us, we check if they are real. Yes, we will reach out to certain media outlets to ask, yes, this person actually working, so that we don't give out critical information to politicians.
Thank you very much. Before I ask anything further, I would like to actually give the word to our audience, and maybe you have questions to our two dear guests.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentations, first of all. I would like to delve a bit deeper into the issues of misunderstanding and prejudices. But my question is not about the civil society organizations and governmental organizations. For instance, in Turkey, since your case, do you sometimes face problems of misunderstanding the actual context and the actual problematic of our countries, of conflicts, when working with the representatives of the civil society here, with people who are actually at the forefront of, you know, understanding it, but do you come across such problems? Thanks.
This is a super question. Thank you very much. It's a very, very important question, and I will start with the civil society. My experience in the first months after the full scale invasion, then it was that some people said we really are big organizations that are working with a few Eastern European countries and are doing a really good job. I was asked if it's possible to have Ukrainians, Russians together on the stage. And it was like, it was very careful, but it was dancing as possible. And for me, it was, I was disappointed because it was just not this understanding of the situation. And we are talking really about organizations that really have 10 years experience in this countries. So
I think it was important also to speak to them, just to explain why it's not possible, it's not for us. And there are also organizations like they are also working in the field, Eastern partnerships countries, and they were also like, oh guys, it's time now. We give you our time, and hopefully, like you can speak about your topics. And when we do things together, we can also do it in the background. And it's also very best way just to understand they understand. And about German government, it's also it was very new experience. We were invited and very big thing also to is also to be a part of some coordination circle where are a lot of German big foundations and organizations, NGOs, and have this exchange together, sitting like in front of the computer, like the situation for 2 hours once a month, and have an exchange and listen to each other. It was very new and it's a really new format, but I have this feeling that it's really important to be a part and to be shared. And yes, there are a lot of work. I'm honest. There are a lot of work on just to explain it. This, like to have this exchange. This information, I think, really in Ukraine somehow by explaining about our history. And for example, it's just not connected to your question, but it's also very, very important. When German representatives of the government are speaking, for example, of responsibility of Germany according to the Second World War, it's often that Russia, it means Russia. Ukraine would be like other countries not so present. Yeah.
Yeah, also from my side, thank you for the question. We have to give ourselves, our organization, also all the volunteers a lot of credit, because so many people are putting in, like for years already, so much work, time, and hard effort into reshaping those narratives, and there is change. It is gradual, it's a lot of time, but we see it, and we also see it when we're working with politicians. Like there's more and more support actually, and yes, it is hard, and there are certain conflicts. I believe what are like the two hardest problems for Belarusians is that when it comes to topics of, I think where there are like situations and topics that can be compared, it's like to be politically repressed under an autocratic or dictatorial regime, and then the view always switches to Russia, and so there's like lots of fundings, like Russian activists and dissidents are getting a lot of every single repressed person. There is a physical safety. That there is a whole focus on Russians coming here to Germany, and basically no one talks about the scale of repression that's currently happening in Belarus. We actually had a national uprising. We have this collective consciousness of like, yeah, we have now over 1,500 political prisoners, over 40,000 people who went through prisons, and all of that. Like the scale of the understanding from what's happening is higher, and still we have to, if I might say it frankly, fight for every single cent for our projects. And this is not something I think it's a very false narrative to say that Ukraine is taking, like no one wanted this war, no one like didn't want to have like Russians invading our country. This is on the other hand something that now is bringing more attention to what is also in German politics, and then we also talk a lot about responsibility. Also, like now we've had a Chancellor Angela Merkel, loads of views, and this is not only something that we like criticizing softly about the current political situation, but also before was a lot of people not seeing and not taking appropriate actions when we are talking about the ties. Economical ties that should have been cut off 2014 or 2020 with the Belarus uprising. Sanctions that might have been so much harder, and the sanctions that we're seeing right now against Belarus, they might have helped in 2020 actually, and that they are coming so late is also showing how intertwined German economy is still with Russia and still the Belarusian system. And so this is something where we understand it is hard, those are all hard questions, but they are experts working in this field, and what we try to do is just direct the people who don't know to those expert fields to say, if you don't know, please go there. Here you have economists, here you have political actors in the cultural sphere, here you have students, and so on. So,
thank you. I want to shortly add that this is one thing you mentioned, as nobody is taking account for Ukraine, also but very often this topic is instrumentalized by Russian media. Also, embarrassing between refugees from different countries. There are not this dialogue for people. Then there's it's very unpleasant that it starts to be this comparison to people from Ukraine that come to Germany. They get everything that they need and want and whatever, and people from all different countries, a huge task that we have to stick together, but when it starts to be so, we have the ability to talk about real problems that people from Ukraine also have, different topics in schools, and it starts to be of course, all of that, and it's about disinformation and this, what to say, this new, creating the special news. It's not like fake, but it's instrumentalizing of very hard topics.
Yes, it's also all about which side they want to represent. So they can be just telling you 10% of the truth and being like, yeah, Ukrainians or Belarusians or Georgians or Armenians or whoever get this here, so they're lucky. And then it's telling another 80-90% of information, what are the other hidden or not even hidden, obvious problems. So yeah, this making also another blind spot that already here in the society. We could take another.
I'm very upset. I represent the Ukrainian youth in the United Kingdom, so lots of things that we say bring about. However, the situation in the UK is much better in the sense that it's more resilient to Russian propaganda, and the political politicians in the UK are much more supportive in the public of Ukraine. My question is specifically about two fields, about academia, German academia. More specifically, is there more willingness to fund studies linked to Ukraine down the post-war space? And about media discourse. Has there been a change in communicating with German journalists about the main issues that you have? And in this aspect, I also like Nataliya about Ukraine's ambassador, which is designed. I think he made quite a splash in terms of media, but he's a little bit very direct style of communication with German journalists. Do you think it was kind of the right approach that had an impact?
So we're actually working also in academics, especially we helped some Belarusian students to get a foothold here in Germany, because a big part of the democratic movement was organized by student unions and by student organizations. And so this is, of course, part of our work. Is a change also in different programs. Like right now, we have different universities more focusing on actually promoting Ukrainistic
actually as a way of studying not only Russian language but also studying Ukrainian language. I myself study at Viadrina, Europa University in Frankfurt, which is close to the Polish border, and there we have the field of studying entangled history of Ukraine. And a professor from Halyko, who is also like talking about different issues, for example, also like the general view on Eastern Europe, for example. And so those are like our and will be finding more popularity and more popular approaches also like in the upcoming years because more people are interested in it now and promoting it. And I believe we're always searching also for where are my people. Like it's funny, my Ukrainian friend asked me, yeah, you have your Belarus community, but where are our people? And then they said, okay, well, now we understand. At the same time, there's like huge networks that will continue to work. So I'm like quite optimistic that there's academia, and at the same time, of course, there are people from outside of the field who are signing open letters against arming Ukraine and other various weird ideas. And this is also something where science is being misused as a statement of authority and to use that to just to change narratives and to set discussions that shouldn't be discussed because they're so obvious.
We are going to hold a discussion for scientific world and perception of Ukraine. I studied in the University of Ukraine, and mainly it was during my non-Jewish community. It actually didn't stop like Poland and Russia were Spain, also in the Jewish way, and some of course Ukraine because the reason was that time afterwards consolidation. And I think it's a huge part. As you mentioned, we have Professor Pryhornytska, but he's just one professor. And we have, of course, also Ukrainian University in Munich, but I mean, Berlin and Munich and various zones are differences also in cultural perception, because Berlin is a little bit specific place also. Eastern, like new Buddhist and then new regions of Germany are also specific also on this historical perception. It's because of Germany, because of divided Berlin, divided Berlin. And also we have a lot of scholarships for Ukrainians and also new programs that will follow. So I think that it's a good work in this direction, but I'm asking myself how sustainable it is. And I see as long as Ukraine, like Russia war in Ukraine are the topic in the media, it would be also the topic in all different speakers. And our work, like all of us, is to make it sustainable, to create a structure that when it's not so like on the in every media to read about Russian war in Ukraine, then it's nevertheless as a topic in this work is going on. I don't know how it's a bit working just to have also the structure. And to the media. Yeah, I was just talking now and I just catch myself on this idea that it's very often or it's not so it's seldom to read Russian war against Ukraine, or just where is written Russian war in Ukraine. Very often you can read that it's Ukraine war. It's very short because it's short, and before 2022, 2014 it was Ukrainian conflict and crisis, and now it's Ukrainian war, and it's a big problem. And we wrote a letter also to different media and asked to call it not Ukraine war, but Russia's war. And they said no, we can't change it. They actually no. Reasoning, no reasoning, like they no explanation. It was just last year we can do it. So It's a very huge work also what needs in wording, you know, so like Ukraine, but a lot of media saying that the war starts 2022, like from the beginning of the war, and it means February 2022. Not a lot of people really understand that this Russian war in Ukraine, 2014, this annexation problem, it speaks about annexation problem. But it's like, it's a topic and it's causality of all these things that happened, like all these 8 years, happened a lot of repressions, a lot of aggression, a lot of things. Like also German sovereignty was attacked by Russian Federation with tear gas maybe in 2019. So it's a huge topic, and media, we use a lot of German media, with German journalists, and also international journalists, and we are trying to be in this exchange, and they are open to this exchange. But again, it's a very exciting question how sustainable. And about Ukraine, I can say just my personal opinion, I think he did a huge work in Germany. He changed German to Ukraine. And of course, he was very, sometimes maybe too strong in his statements. And I mean, like, agree with all he said. But I definitely, he really changed all this media world. What needs to be, what was situation and after, before full-scale invasion, and especially after full-scale invasion.
And maybe also to add something, where we always have, of course, is like it's being like topics are being represented to like through a German lens, which a lens perspective is of course always biased. And so when you talk about language is incredibly important. Like in German, we have actually to differentiate this by Switzerland, White Russia, and Belarus. So like the one thing, White Russia is just simply a false translation, which is still very prominent in the East. I also grew up with that. I was half White Russian until I understood in 2020. Well, that's just not true. And with that also comes, for example, when we talk about Ukraine, the Ukraine. Language makes huge difference how we approach that. Or when we are writing Belarusian, we write it with one S because it's not Belarusian, it's Belarusian. And those questions are questions of language to get in all subjectivity also. And the other question is of course always like discriminating issues, as like most of working in this field, and women being portrayed, and Eastern European women also being portrayed. For example, this is something very common when you read, for example, articles about Nataliya. You can have all the opinions about her in the world that you want, but the majority of Belarusians voted for her as like presidential candidate, and she has a representative figure still for the democratic movement. The approach that a lot of German media always takes is like really getting into her personal history and really, oh, what's her emotions, oh, what's your woman, but oh, how do you feel? And then the headline will be, yes, I cry in the morning, but then I stand up again and I continue my crying. And it's like, why do you have to talk about a woman crying? Like, this is a woman who won the Karls Prize and who's done so much work in her life. And yes, of course, it is a humble person. Yes, of course, it is a person who's politically enough for, maybe Western feminists, for example. That is okay, because that was not her role, and that was also like not her approach, but just to like, this is always a question of framing. Or for example, when it comes came to the incredible Ukrainian demonstration that you showed that was here at the Independence Day, it was huge. There were thousands of people there. What was then again portrayed in German media was like, oh yeah, Organization Feature was thought that 10,000 participants would come, but there were only 2,000. Would actually have said what would be the maximum capacity, like not for these to come, so there wasn't not more. And so there were actually around countings of like 5,000 to 6,000 people who came, which is a lot after 6 months of very, very intense Ukrainian work in Germany. But they only took the numbers from the very first counting, from the very first one. You know, like everyone was always running late. So what was in the media was like, yeah, like 2,000 people or something, and there's not much happening. And so this is also something we want to push work and how much volunteering work is actually happening here in the structures, not only in Germany, but also in Poland, in Ukraine, in Lithuania, in Georgia, like for example, in Batumi, there's a Belarusian, Ukrainian, Georgian center for help. And this is the things that we need to talk about and the things that need to be funded. It's actually like what we talked about. It's the people's work. And I think we're getting there, but yeah, it takes a lot of effort. And so we're mostly trying to get resources in forms of funding and media attention.
Thank you very, very much. We will round up here. We will now proceed to the lunch, and about this, Katja will tell you a bit more in a second. So there you would be able to also continue the discussions and also approach our dear panelists with more and deeper questions. Also maybe something that you would not like to address now in the whole public, so this would be the time and space. And also to sum it up, it is